Go.
Okay. So, hi, this is Lizzie and Karen again, shared broadcast number 4. And I'm going to begin with my quote or passage from the reading. And so I chose a passage from the Scully Ross article about adult ed in a changing economy. And on page 79, it says, adult educators become biographical coaches who aid learners in the reflexive, biographical learning through which they can reorganize their experience, create new meaning in their life history, and build a new viable life circumstance or cultural context. The reason why I chose this quote, because I thought, whether intentionally or not, given our current population and that quote is an example on why we need a more culturally relevant and relatable curriculum, whether it be primary or adult education. Because I think even though the rest of that paragraph goes on to state all the negative connotations around that quote, I think it drives an important point that both Scully Ross and Kuiper articles point out that education can either further inequity or it can be a means to liberation from societal oppression. And one cause of that oppression, in my opinion, is by being forced a curriculum that you have no connection with, by people who look and know nothing about you or your family or your culture. And I think the ideal would be finding liberation with the guidance of a culturally aware educator to help you through difficult transitions in your life and being presented ways to reflect on and reframe your condition. So the text mentions the initial drive in the beginning of the chapter. It mentions the initial drive to assimilate immigrants at the turn of the century so they could be productive workers. And the Scully Ross article both opens with the frightening statistics about lower percentages of literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving skills. And then it goes on to note how the human capital framework, in that framework, the economic performance and competitiveness of a nation are inextricably linked to the knowledge and capabilities of its people. And so to me, that kind of brings in the connection that you really want these people to be educated and to have access to education as much as possible. As far as adult educators and its impacts on design, the Brookfield video noted that the purpose and the constant need to update skills was still there, even though the conditions and the population have changed. So my oversimplified implications for adult education would then be a need for adult educators to research the transitions that their particular population of adult students are experiencing, and then actively step forward, whether you are in a vocational training session or professional development, and provide that guidance needed for making those life changes, and try to find a way to induce critical thinking while giving them the immediate skills that they're seeking by being in that program. And then what I would like to learn more of and possible next steps, I'm interested in figuring out what, given that they're talking about how people are going into more vocational, shortened, condensed programs, I'm interested in figuring out what an abridged critical thinking exercise would look like when dealing with adult students in vocational programs that focus more on skills and less on reflection and social change. So that's my spiel.
Something I also wanted to add on when you were talking about the Brookfield video is that he, to me, he was talking a lot about how, like, the state of adult education, right? And he was like,
right, the profession itself was
and like how it's always relevant yet never, or maybe not taken seriously, sort of thing. I don't know if he said it like that, but he said it was always relevant because people are continuing to learn in different capacities. But the fact that it's not defined makes it more ambiguous, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, going along with what you say, I think that there needs to be a push of thinking about relevant now topics that help guide curriculum and guide instruction for learners.
Yeah.
So that they can, so that the curriculum is meeting them halfway, like they are learning the skills and whatnot that they need to be successful, but the curriculum and teacher needs to meet them halfway, to meet them on their level, make it relevant to them, make it relevant to their culture, their history, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I wanted to add, because I did agree. I got a lot of those points from the reading as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any personal experience or just anecdotes to go along with your takeaways?
Well, I always have a personal experience when it comes to making curriculum more culturally relevant rather than Eurocentric necessarily. And I mean, especially when we're constantly hearing about how math programs around the world are more advanced than ours, but somehow we're still using the same curriculum, or how certain states in the country are messing with their history lessons and stuff. It impacts our educational system. And so if we look at the history where they say, oh, education is important to make a good citizen, to make a strong country, then why does it feel like half the time education is sort of the lowest priority, or why don't we,
Like, who would you say it's the lowest priority for?
Well, like when you hear about teacher salaries nationwide, there are states where they're on the poverty level. Teachers should be the most revered people, in my humble opinion. And so
thank you.
Yes, in my humble opinion, a teacher should be the most revered position, but the country and the individual states insist on prioritizing their funding elsewhere rather than putting it into the educational systems and boosting them up in some way. And then we have examples where Microsoft brings in students from other countries who have more technological savvy than our own people here, because their educational system is more advanced than ours. So it's
also more technical. I'm asking this because I think we preach this thing of like, we preach this social emotional aspect, and we preach this cultural relevance aspect, which I'm saying is great, but I don't know the educational systems outside of the United States, but I do feel like they are more drill and kill. They're more serious. And I almost feel like we talk about these ideals that we need to promote as adult educators.
Mm-hmm.
But then we
drill and kill like American education or other countries?
I don't think American.
Some are drill and kill, definitely.
Oh, well.
No, I agree on that front. Yeah, there are some that are a bit extreme, Yeah. But like I'm trying to think of an example. My husband was studying different educational systems for a little while, and he was mentioning how we tend to be more linear. Like we separate our subjects and we tend to be more linear. And I think recently some of our classrooms have become more
interdisciplinary.
Yeah, where you mesh the math with the lit and the history and stuff, and it makes more sense.
Yeah.
In a way, so that you can see a bigger picture and not just try to separate things in your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Totally scattered, but
okay. I'm just asking questions.
No.
I can go through my tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get my notes. Let's see. So I actually did my quote last. Mostly because when I was reading, I kind of picked up on a big theme that I wanted to bring up. And so I don't know how closely the quote relates to what I'm about to say, but you guys can all be the judges of that. So my quote is from page 129, but it's actually a quote from Brookfield. whatever book that they quoted him from on page 47. And we do our work as adult educators because we believe that through our practice, we can help ourselves and others lead more authentic and compassionate lives in the world organized according to ideals of fairness and social justice, encouraging more inclusive, collaborative, and democratic forms of adult education. So I picked this quote because it was about adult educators, and it kind of is something that I feel like or just all educators is something good to strive for. It was very kind of all encompassing of those things. And the themes that I picked up in the book, or the other readings, and in the text for that matter, was that there's key themes of adult learning hitting on human capital, hitting on feeling like, so education can cause or affect its learner's identity. So it can change how a learner sees themselves. And one of the readings called it the life course framework. A feeling of empowerment. So learning society framework was another, what another reading called it. And then overall human capital, or the human capital framework. So the articles, they dove into what those frameworks look like, and they made arguments for and against each. And my best way to relate to the reading was just to kind of think about my own experience as a learner. And so it made me think about why, especially lately being 8 months pregnant, I've been thinking why am I doing this to myself, taking all these courses? It's been a weird quarter for me, but I'm persevering. But so in terms of pursuing a higher degree, so I thought about what started this and why did I go into this? And I was like, well, I'm not making any more money at my school. I'm capped out. If I want to make more money, I have to get my master's degree. And then I chose this program mostly because it was associated with education, or I could use it to get into the corporate world and therefore make more money. So it was very much so, the seed of it was human capital, was me saying, all right, I'm going to invest time and money into my own education so that I can make more money, and hopefully not have to spend my whole weekends grading. But we'll see where that, I'm kind of having a resurgence of loving education again. So that's good. Throughout the program, so then I thought about this, all right, well, so then, you go through all these stages throughout the program, and throughout the program, because I'm about a year in, I'm taking my 36 credit, I'll be up to 36 credits after this quarter. And I've been inspired to research equity in education, mostly the secondary level, because we do track students right now at my school based off of their academic level, and I've been against that my whole entire career, and it drives me nuts that we do that, because it separates the kids and it makes the...
What do you mean by track the students by...
So we have an honors level pre-calculus and a regular level pre-calculus.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I think it should just be blended. I think that all students in pre-calculus should take the same pre-calculus. And what ends up happening is that the kids at the lower track, the gap between them gets so much bigger and bigger and bigger that they can't ever make the jump back up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it just drives me nuts that it even exists in the first place. So I put a lot of research into that, and in how to lower that gap over time. And also and this one's more casual, but navigating my role and just kind of identifying myself as a female in STEM. I didn't even mention this on someone's comments last week. I've never really thought that I was disadvantaged as being a female in math or liking math. But I guess I've kind of tried to explore that a little bit more and how I feel about it. I do think that there should be more women in STEM, but I don't. I don't know. It's hard for me to say that I've ever experienced a stigma with it. Yet again, I did become a teacher rather than a physicist. because I was probably told to go into teaching by somebody, but you know, there's that. The last thing, and this is my own personal struggle, and I know it comes from my background as a white female, and it's mostly seeing education as a form of social justice. And I realized, again, because of my background, I've never had to view education as a means to break free of any social injustices. Even in this course, learning about education as a form of control has been very new to me, and something that I've been trying to grapple with, how something that I revere as so positive could be so controlling, or so, I guess, shown in a negative light. So that's something that I've been trying to think about a little bit this quarter. And then just although this makes me feel bad to admit, I don't know if I will completely ever understand what it means to equate education with freedom. I think that I'll be able to understand. I don't know. I don't know if I can say that I'll ever be able to understand another person's struggle of paying for their own education with loans and stuff like that. So it's been something that I realize that I have been lucky to have access and easy access to education all my life. But that's going to be a piece that I have to kind of keep in the back of my mind as an educator, that it's not as accessible for everybody. So how does this impact educators? Well, I think it impacts educators a lot. All the readings make reference to the fact that they need to hold these fundamental pieces in the back of their heads when they are, working in adult education. In fact, the Caper article says that the theoretical frameworks not only historically play off one another as they exist, both because as they exist both because of and in collaboration with one another, but concurrently impact both academic research and policies. So that was kind of at the end saying that, they showed the three frameworks and talked about the three frameworks. They gave positives and negatives to both of them, but then really at the end is saying, they all play together. They all are interwoven, and that's something that all educators need to know going forward. And then explain what you would like to learn and possible next steps to do this. And I said it would be nice to analyze a course or that I am taking, or really my or a course that I've taken before against these three frameworks, to reflect on the ways that the course or my experience in the course relates to each one, just to make it a little bit more tangible. Rather, you have these three ideological frameworks, that are very not concrete. So it'd be nice to apply it to specific experience. So.
Yep.
That's where I went this week.
You're like me, all over the place. No, I totally feel you on the trying to navigate your position and having somebody say that, have you ever experienced disadvantage? And you're like, well, no, nothing's ever stopped me, but then you have to stop and think about it a little bit. And I've been given a lot of privileges throughout my life. And then there are some things where I've been given not disadvantages, but roadblocks. I've hit a lot of roadblocks, but mostly my family has always been the type where nothing stops you, and we're just tenacious as all get out, And so, and so people are like, oh, I wasn't hired because of this, or I don't have an education because of that. And I was like, that didn't stop my family. And so in my head, I'm like, well, that never stopped us. And then my husband has to remind me that not everybody thinks or does or experiences things the way that I do.
Yeah.
Or the way that my family did. And so even though my family persevered or pushed through, somebody else's family couldn't get through the roadblocks.
I wonder if that relates back to your piece where it was talking about lower problem solving, because they also kind of relate problem solving to resilience. and
Yeah.
in having the tenacity to get through or endure something so difficult and come on top. So I wonder if it would be interesting to dive into some trends of lower problem solving skills versus tenacity.
Yep, definitely. And resilience is a big one for so many people.
And how it's related also to, I guess, education.
Yeah, like part of the constraints where the disposition. Mm-hmm. If they have no sense of resiliency or no tenacity, then all they see are barriers, and they tell themselves they can't do it.
And shut down somewhat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They'll shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a negative note to end on, but I don't have much to add.
I'm trying. I had a lot of comments in my head while you were going through.
Yeah.
And I just, I know how you were talking about how you're not used to seeing education in a negative light, mm-hmm. or as a liberating light.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm struggling with too, because when I'm reading the articles and they say, oh, it's a source of inequity, and I was like, what? Because I thought education was the great equalizer.
Yeah.
Well, that's the great. What is that? What do you mean it's inequity? But then you read more and you're like, oh, okay. So then there's the have and the have-nots, and I can see that in elementary schools right here in my district.
Yeah.
If you're in a slightly better neighborhood with a much stronger PTA, your school has about 20 million things more than Northgate Elementary right up the road, Mm-hmm. And so I can see where the barriers can show up in education. And then whether or not, because as an employee, I have access to a free master's degree, and then there are other people who are going into tens of thousands of debt because of a master's degree that may or may not give them a better career.
Yeah.
Mine is an option and it's free.
Yeah.
They're struggling for the rest of their days to pay off a loan for this, so I can see how.
So even when they come out on top and get that new job, they're still out money,
They're still going to pay off those loans,
You mentioned something about school districts having different things, and prior to working, I work at a privileged district. I work for North Shore Schools, mm-hmm. Have money and access to things, but prior to that I worked at a different district in Washington, and because I do believe a lot of the parents work for Microsoft,
yes,
all of the kids had their own access to OneNote, and every child had their own computer, mm-hmm. and it was all driven through Microsoft curriculum or through Microsoft, because Microsoft's smart and they know that if they get the students working on their programs early, it's investing in their company, because then the students learn how to use their products and will hopefully continue to use their products in the future. So I just remember thinking well, of course this district has that access because they're the number one. They are the school district that everyone aspires to be. And it just was kind of crazy how even though I don't think that they asked for all of this access, they also didn't have to work too hard to get it.
Right. Yeah. They already had the attention mm-hmm. to get it. My the preschool that my son is going to right now, it's a brand new building, brand new preschool. And the preschool that he was just in last year, they were taking donations for food, donations for books in the classroom. Their classroom wasn't even full of supplies on the first day of school. And the building itself looked like it needed a new coat of paint. It was pretty bare. It was a naked classroom on his first day of preschool last year. And then I walk into a preschool this year, and it's a brand new building, and it's up here in Wedgwood instead of in the Central District. And they've got boxes of brand new books. These are not donated. These are boxes of brand new hot off the press books and brand new clean toys that were freshly bought, not donated by other kids, not already sticky, and they didn't have to ask their parents for donations or anything. It was just given to them by the school. And I'm just sitting there like, this is really disturbing, because I have these inner city kids over here who struggled throughout the year with nothing. Mm-hmm. And then my son's second year is with these suburban kids who have everything and aren't struggling for anything. At least not in their classroom. I don't know what their home life's like, but not in the classroom. Not struggling for anything.
That's
and
true.
I mean, the teachers don't have to use their imagination to improvise because they're given everything they need for their classroom.
But, things don't always mean that you have it easy. But I would say that maybe the imagination is a good piece.
Yeah. I mean, the kids will have a good time no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, give a kid a crayon and a piece of paper and he's happy, But it's just one of those dramatic differences within like less than 2 miles away from each other. I can see that kind of a dramatic difference.
All right. Well, I'm good for the week.
You good? Yep.
Because I think we're probably getting close to our 20 minutes. So I thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you have a great week.
All right.